Jack Thompson, a 35-year-old factory worker, lived a simple life in the small town of Millbrook. His calloused hands and weary eyes told the story of countless overtime shifts and missed family dinners. Despite the long hours, Jack always managed a warm smile for his wife, Sarah, and their 2 young children. Sarah, 32, was a stay-at-home mom with a passion for painting that she had put on hold to raise their family. Her vibrant personality contrasted with the monotony of their daily routine, and she often dreamed of the life they could have if only they had more resources. Tom, Jack's younger brother by 3 years, was the black sheep of the family. An aspiring artist with more charm than success, he bounced between odd jobs and crashed on their couch more often than anyone cared to admit. Despite his flaws, Tom's magnetic personality made him a favorite with the kids and a constant presence in the Thompson household. Millbrook was your typical small town, where everyone knew everyone else's business, and dreams often took a backseat to practicality. Jack's job at the local manufacturing plant was steady but unfulfilling. He spent his days assembling parts, daydreaming about providing a better life for his family. As Jack pulled into his driveway after another grueling shift, he couldn't help but wonder if this was all life had in store for him. Little did he know, fate was about to deal him a hand that would change everything. You might be thinking this is just another story about small-town life, but trust me, you're in for a wild ride. It was a Tuesday evening when Jack stopped by the local convenience store to pick up milk and, on a whim, a lottery ticket. He barely gave it a second thought as he tucked it into his wallet and headed home. The following Saturday, as the family gathered around the TV for their weekly movie night, the lottery numbers were announced. Jack, half listening, absently pulled out his ticket. His eyes widened as he matched number after number. "Sarah," he whispered, his voice trembling. "Sarah, I think we just won." The room erupted in chaos. Sarah screamed with joy, the kids jumped up and down on the couch, and even Tom, who had been dozing in the armchair, leapt to his feet in disbelief. $50 million. It was more money than they could even comprehend. The next few days were a whirlwind of lawyers, financial advisors, and plans for the future. Jack talked about quitting his job, buying a new house, and traveling the world. Sarah's eyes sparkled as she imagined finally pursuing her art career. Even Tom seemed inspired, talking about opening his own gallery. But beneath the excitement, there was an undercurrent of tension. Sarah seemed distracted, often lost in thought. Tom was around more than ever, always ready with a suggestion on how to spend the money. And Jack, in his euphoria, missed the meaningful glances exchanged between his wife and brother. As Jack signed the final papers to claim their winnings, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He turned to Sarah, expecting to see joy mirrored in her eyes, but instead caught a fleeting look of, was it guilt? I know you're probably thinking everything's coming up roses for Jack, but hold that thought. Weeks passed, and the Thompson family settled into their new life of luxury. They moved into a sprawling mansion on the outskirts of town, complete with a state-of-the-art studio for Sarah and a guest house where Tom had taken up residence. Jack, true to his word, had quit his job and was enjoying his newfound freedom. But as the initial excitement wore off, Jack began to notice changes in Sarah. She spent more and more time in her studio, often working late into the night. When he tried to connect with her, she seemed distant, distracted. He told himself it was just the adjustment to their new lifestyle, but a nagging doubt began to grow in the back of his mind. One balmy summer evening, Jack decided to surprise Sarah with a romantic dinner. He prepared her favorite meal and set the table on their expansive patio, overlooking the twinkling lights of Millbrook below. As he put the finishing touches on the table setting, he realized Sarah wasn't in her studio as he'd thought. Curious, Jack made his way to the guest house. As he approached, he heard muffled voices and laughter. His heart began to race as he recognized Sarah's melodic giggle, followed by the low rumble of Tom's voice. With trembling hands, Jack pushed open the door. The sight that greeted him shattered his world in an instant. Sarah and Tom sprang apart, but it was too late. The intimacy of their embrace left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. "Jack, I can explain," Sarah began, her voice quivering. But Jack couldn't hear her over the roaring in his ears. His brother. His wife. The two people he trusted most in the world had betrayed him in the worst possible way. How long? Jack managed to choke out. The silence that followed was deafening. Tom looked away, unable to meet his brother's eyes. It was Sarah who finally spoke, her words like daggers to Jack's heart. It started before the lottery, she whispered. In that moment, everything Jack thought he knew about his life crumbled around him. The perfect family, the loving wife, the loyal brother, it had all been a lie. Without a word, Jack turned and walked out of the guest house. He ignored Sarah and Tom's calls, their pleas for him to come back and talk. In a daze, he made his way to the garage, got into his car, and drove off into the night. As the lights of Millbrook faded in his rearview mirror, Jack had no idea where he was going. All he knew was that he couldn't stay in that house, in that town, with the weight of their betrayal crushing him. If your heart is racing and you're feeling a mix of anger and sympathy for Jack, just wait until you see what happens next. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Jack found himself wandering from city to city, trying to outrun the pain and betrayal that followed him like a shadow. He stayed in seedy motels, drove down endless highways, and spent sleepless nights staring at unfamiliar ceilings. During his journey, Jack's mind often drifted back to happier times. He remembered the day he first met Sarah, her laugh echoing through the small coffee shop where she worked as a barista. He recalled Tom's unwavering support when Jack lost his job during the recession, how his brother had helped him land the factory gig that kept their family afloat. But with these sweet memories came the realization of missed red flags. The lingering touches between Sarah and Tom that he dismissed as familial affection. The inside jokes he wasn't privy to. The way Sarah's eyes would light up when Tom entered a room. Meanwhile, back in Millbrook, Sarah and Tom were consumed by guilt and worry. They made countless attempts to reach Jack, phone calls, emails, even hired a private investigator. But Jack had vanished without a trace. As the months wore on, Sarah threw herself into her art, creating dark, haunting pieces that reflected her inner turmoil. Tom, unable to bear the weight of his betrayal, spiraled into a depression, turning to alcohol to numb his pain. The once bustling Thompson mansion became a somber, silent place. The children, confused and hurt by their father's absence, withdrew into themselves. The lottery winnings, once a source of such joy and possibility, now felt like a curse. One stormy night, as Jack sat in a dingy bar on the outskirts of some nameless town, he overheard a conversation that would change everything. "Did you hear about that lottery winner?" one patron slurred to another. "The one who disappeared after catching his wife and brother together?" Jack's ears perked up, his heart pounding. "Yeah," the other man replied. "Word is, the whole thing was a setup. The brother bought the ticket, convinced the wife to go along with it. They were planning to take the money and run, but the husband won fair and square. Messed up their whole plan." Jack's world tilted on its axis. Could it be true? Had Sarah and Tom's betrayal run even deeper than he'd imagined? With shaking hands, Jack pulled out his phone and did something he hadn't done in months. He called home. Just when you think you've got it all figured out, life throws you another curveball. Brace yourself for what's coming next. Jack's return to Millbrook was like a storm rolling in, sudden, intense, and impossible to ignore. He burst through the doors of the mansion, startling Sarah and Tom, who had been in the middle of a heated argument. The room crackled with tension as Jack confronted them with what he'd overheard. Sarah broke down, confirming the ugly truth through her tears. Tom, his face a mask of shame and defiance, tried to justify their actions. As accusations flew and years of pent-up emotions poured out, none of them noticed the flashing lights outside or the sound of sirens growing closer. Suddenly, the doors burst open again. This time, it was the police, led by a grim-faced detective. "Jack Thompson," the detective said, "you're under arrest for fraud and embezzlement." The room fell silent, everyone too shocked to speak. It turned out that in his grief and anger, Jack had made some questionable financial decisions during his months away. The Lottery Commission had been investigating, and now they were ready to press charges. As the police moved to handcuff Jack, Sarah made a split-second decision. She stepped forward, confession spilling from her lips. She admitted to everything, the original plan with Tom, their affair, and how she had been the one managing the lottery winnings in Jack's absence, making the fraudulent transactions to cover their tracks. Tom, seeing Sarah ready to sacrifice herself, found a shred of the brother he used to be. He too stepped forward, claiming equal responsibility. The detective, clearly confused by this turn of events, ordered all three to come down to the station for questioning. As they were led out of the house, a commotion erupted next door. Their elderly neighbor, Mrs. Johnson, had collapsed in her driveway. Without hesitation, Jack broke free from the officer's grasp and rushed to her side, performing CPR until the paramedics arrived. In that moment of crisis, all thoughts of betrayal and arrest faded away. Sarah and Tom joined Jack, working together to save Mrs. Johnson's life. You might think you know where this is heading, but trust me, you're in for a wild ride. As the ambulance sped Mrs. Johnson to the hospital, the detective, moved by the Thompsons' actions, agreed to postpone their arrest. The three of them piled into Jack's car and followed the ambulance, their own drama temporarily forgotten in the face of a life-or-death situation. At the hospital, they waited anxiously for news. Hours passed, and tensions began to rise again. Harsh words were exchanged, old wounds reopened. Just as it seemed they might come to blows, a doctor emerged with an update. Mrs. Johnson had suffered a massive heart attack. She needed emergency surgery, but there was a complication: she had a rare blood type, and the hospital's supply was dangerously low. Without hesitation, all three Thompsons offered to be tested as potential donors. In a twist of fate, both Jack and Tom were matches. The surgery was risky, and there was only time to harvest blood from one of them. In that moment, years of rivalry and recent betrayal melted away. Tom insisted it should be Jack, saying he had more to live for with his children. Jack, seeing a glimmer of the brother he once knew and loved, argued that Tom's younger age made him the better candidate. In the end, they agreed to let the doctor decide. As Tom was prepped for the procedure, he turned to Jack and Sarah. "Whatever happens," he said, "I'm sorry. For everything." Those were the last words Tom ever spoke. During the procedure, there was an unexpected complication. Despite the doctor's best efforts, Tom didn't make it off the operating table. In the wake of Tom's death, the Thompson family was plunged into a maelstrom of grief, guilt, and shocking revelations. As Jack and Sarah sat shell-shocked in the hospital waiting room, a man in a suit approached them. He introduced himself as an agent from the Lottery Commission's fraud department. "Mr. and Mrs. Thompson," he said gravely, "I'm afraid I have some news that's going to change everything you think you know about your lottery win." The agent explained that their ticket had been part of a larger investigation into lottery fraud. The convenience store where Jack had purchased the ticket was at the center of a sophisticated scam involving manipulated tickets and insider information. "The truth is," the agent continued, "your win wasn't random at all. Someone wanted you to win that money, and we believe we know why." He pulled out a file and showed them documents detailing large withdrawals from their lottery winnings, funneled into offshore accounts. The transactions matched perfectly with Sarah's confession about covering their tracks, but the dates were wrong. These had started long before Jack had left town. As the implications sank in, Sarah gasped. "Tom," she whispered. It was all Tom. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Tom hadn't been planning to run away with Sarah and the money. He had orchestrated the entire thing, the rigged ticket, the affair, even Jack's departure, as an elaborate scheme to save his brother's family from financial ruin and rekindle their failing marriage. In his final act, Tom had sacrificed not just his life, but his reputation, to protect the people he loved most. The revelations about Tom's sacrifice and the true nature of the lottery win turned the Thompsons' world upside down once again. The fraud charges were dropped, but the emotional toll was immense. In the months that followed, Jack and Sarah embarked on a difficult journey of healing and reconciliation. They attended counseling, both individually and as a couple, working through the complex web of emotions left in the wake of recent events. Slowly, tentatively, they began to rebuild their relationship, finding strength in their shared grief and the love they still held for each other. The experience had changed them both profoundly, teaching them the true value of family, forgiveness, and second chances. In honor of Tom's memory, they established a charitable foundation, using the remaining lottery money to help struggling artists and families in need. Through their work, they found a sense of purpose and redemption. As they stood together at the grand opening of the Tom Thompson Memorial Art Gallery, Jack squeezed Sarah's hand. They had weathered a storm that would have broken most couples, emerging stronger and more united than ever before. In the end, they realized that the greatest fortune wasn't the money they'd won, but the love they'd rediscovered and the family they'd pieced back together. As the credits roll on this emotional journey of fortune's twist, we'd love to hear your thoughts. How did this story of love, betrayal, and redemption impact you? Did you see the twists coming, or were you surprised at every turn? We value your insight and want to create a community of storytellers and story lovers. So, take a moment to share your reactions in the comments below. What was your favorite part? Which character did you relate to the most? How would you have handled the situations Jack, Sarah, and Tom faced? Don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed the video, and subscribe to our channel for more gripping tales that explore the complexities of human relationships and the unpredictable nature of life. If this story touched you, spread the word. Share it with friends and family who appreciate thought-provoking narratives. Your support helps us continue creating content that challenges perspectives and stirs emotions. Lastly, ring that notification bell to stay updated on our upcoming projects. We have more stories in the works that promise to keep you on the edge of your seat. Remember, every view, like, comment, and share helps our channel grow and allows us to keep bringing you captivating stories like Fortune's Twist. Thank you for being part of our storytelling community.